All right, everyone. Thank you for joining the Women in Bio sponsored pitch session at Digital RESI June. We're really excited to have these 5 companies presenting, and we're really thankful to have the investor panelists to participate. We're going to start with an introduction by Lisa Edicio from Women in Bio, the Executive Director. And then it's going to follow by each of our panelists, starting with Diagnostics, where they're going to have the opportunity to introduce their company, followed by their 8 minutes of Q&A with our panelists, who we're fortunate to have Marcia Daywood as a panelist, as well as Josh Barney, Michael Chu, Barbara Clark, and Iris Waring. Thank you so much. And Lisa, your introduction.
Thank you so much, Eric. I appreciate it. And I appreciate all of our investor panelists for joining us. My name is Lisa Haseko. I'm the Executive Director for Women in Bio, and we are thrilled that our Entrepreneur Center was able to conduct this National WIB Pitch and Innovation Challenge with the help of RESI. So we're really excited about this. The process started at the beginning of the year, and we've come down to these 5 finalists, so we're very excited about the opportunities that lay ahead. I did want to just start by talking about the situation that we find ourselves in the world with all the racism that has been going on based on the situation that's gone on starting, years ago with George Floyd. So I wanted to read this statement that Women in Bio has put out, and we will be doing many other initiatives to really help in the efforts to stop this. So Women in Bio is heartbroken by the injustice, inequality, racism, and violence during this dark moment. We empathize with the African American community during this time and wholeheartedly support the continued fight against racism and marginalization of communities of color. The WIB community continues to show our collective strength by remaining allies and advocates for one another. We recommit to our mission to promote diversity and inclusion across the life science sector. And our work has never been more critical, as diversification of all kinds fuels creativity and drives innovation. We will continue to ensure that our membership and events remain inclusive of all who support WIB's mission, to ensure that we foster a culture of inclusion, equity, and respect for one another. A little bit about our organization. We were founded in 2002 to support women in the life sciences from the classroom to the boardroom. We have many initiatives that help support women in their journey in the life sciences. We have 13 chapters in North America, and each of the chapter cities are empowered to engage, educate, and empower women in the life sciences in their chapter cities. Here's just a look at some of the programming that we have, Women in Bio's continuity of support. We start with our STEM programming, which with young women in bio, take them into their postdoc and then mid-level career. We have Executive Women in Bio to help support executives and mentorship. And then we have our Boardroom Ready program, which helps engage and educate women for for-profit boards. Our mentorship program is where our Entrepreneur Center sits, and we mentor throughout all of our initiatives. I'd like to thank our sponsors, our national sponsors, LifeSci Advisors, Horizon, Nectar, Bristol Myers Squibb, Kilpatrick Townsend, Pfizer, Axiom, Biogen, Emergent, Goodwin, BioSurplus, Thomson Hein, the Stevenson Group, EY, and the Bio organization itself. So thank you very much. Now to our female founders finalists. Very excited about this opportunity. I'm so looking forward to listening to the feedback and the pitch for each of these. So congratulations to Misha Duggan, Idis Lima, Andrea Wang, Caitlin Cameron, and Helena Cowley. Look forward to it, and good luck to all of you. Thank you, Eric.
Now I'm going to introduce Misha Duggan from Diagnostics.
Hello, Misha.
Misha?
I think it's your turn.
Hello, Misha?
Yes. Hi, Eric.
Hi. Go ahead, you're up.
Okay, should I get started?
Yes.
Okay. Hi. Did you know that 8 out of 10 heart attacks can be prevented? Prevention starts with knowing which of us are at high risk for such cardiac events. Unfortunately, current primary prevention clinical tools just don't work that well. For every 10 men who are at risk, only 4 are identified correctly. And for women, only 3. Hi, I'm Misha Duggan, the co-founder and CEO of Diagnostics, where we believe you deserve to know if you are at high risk of having a heart attack in the next 3 years. We have developed a physician-ordered at-home test that is launching in Q3 that couples genetic and epigenetic biomarkers to an AI risk calculator. And for every 10 men and 10 women who are at high risk, at least 7 are identified correctly. We are addressing a $6.2 billion US market and have a very strong team and vision to succeed. We're currently raising a $1.5 million seed round to launch our product and build traction. Thank you.
And now the questions from the panelists.
Okay, I have actually 2 questions, very quick questions here. One is, what's the current, clinical acceptance of your predictive biomarker so far? How many publications do you have, and what's the extent of research do you have right now? And the second is that given that you are operating on a predictive biomarker, supposedly you should have conduct a cohort study to verify the predictive power of your biomarker. So what kind of study do you have now?
Yeah, thank you for those questions. So going back between my co-founder and I, my co-founder is one of the pioneers in the field of epigenetics. So he has published in the field of epigenetics for about 15 years now. And my work in epigenetics has been for the past 10 years. So we have a broad range of publications in the world of epigenetics. Specifically to this technology that uses integrated genetic and epigenetic biomarkers, we have 2 preliminary studies that have already been published. Now, with this specific 3-year risk assessment product, we did the development in the Framingham Heart Study offspring cohort of over 1,000 people. And then we validated, to your question about validation, we worked with Intermount Healthcare, their cardiovascular clinic, to validate it in their clinical population that we drew from their biobank. So the development, the validation, as well as the translation into our proprietary assays have all been written up for publication. We will be submitting that to a peer-reviewed journal in about a week or so.
Could you tell us a little bit more? Could you tell us a little bit more about your fundraising timeline and how much more money you feel you need to raise, and then a little bit about how you plan to exit?
Yeah. So just to clarify, what we have raised, or just a specific round?
Both.
Both. Okay. So far we've received close to about $500,000 in pre-seed funding. Most of it came in the form of non-dilutive funding from a phase 1 NIH SBIR, and a little over $200,000 from friends, family, and associates. Those funds mostly went to our product development, so the first product that we have developed. Now we are raising $1.5 million, and we just opened the round in early June. So we don't have any money committed, no soft circle, no hard circle funds yet. And our goal is to close the round by the end of the year. And the use of the funds are mostly going to go towards the commercialization of the blood-based as well as the saliva-based product. It's going to go towards securing strategic channel partners because we believe that's going to help us gain more market traction. And part of it is also going to go towards extension and further validation of the product that we want to do with a large clinical institution that we're still talking to.
And then how much more funding do you think that you'll need before you exit, and what's your plan to exit?
Yeah, so we think the next round for our Series A, we're looking to raise about $3.5 million. So by the time we raise our next set of rounds, and we think our exit will be anywhere between 5 to 8 years, we're going to need about 8 to 10 million to exit. And as far as our exit strategy, we think we have multiple options. The first is, of course, for vertically integrated healthcare, whether it's companies like CVS Health, which has CVS Health Aetna, and us being one of the products they offer as part of their reimbursement and pharmaceuticals. Walgreens, Walmart being options, as well as we look to the pharmaceutical industry with companies developing cardiovascular drugs as being options for exit as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
You hear me well? Yes. Hi. Yes. So I had a question regarding the competition and how do you position yourself with respect to companies developing wearables, continuous monitoring, devices, and so on. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. So our gold standard, the gold standard test that we compared our technology to are the calculators that are run in hospitals and clinics. So they are our primary competitor. But to your question about wearables, where we see wearables are actually potentially strategic partners with us. So our test provides an idea objectively using biomarkers if someone's at risk. And we believe these companies in the adjacent area can work with us to be able to monitor people over time as a way to understand what they're doing and how is that reflecting when they come back to take our test to monitor their risk over time. So as far as us and them being our competition, we're standing out with a clinical test. And this is a clinical test that uses objective biomarkers that is heart disease specific and have high sensitivity, and a physician is involved. And as I mentioned, wearables like, let's say, Apple Watch or Fitbit being devices that are used in conjunction with our product potentially to monitor someone's risk and changes in behavior over time.
Okay, thank you.
Who orders these tests? Is it the GP or is it the cardiologist?
Yeah, that's a great question because we're focusing on primary prevention, and primary prevention indicates that these people don't have symptoms yet. And because they don't have symptoms, they tend to stay with primary care physicians and internists and don't quite make it yet to the cardiologist. Our hope is to either reduce the time before they need to see a cardiologist or prevent it altogether.
And have you had any discussions with insurance companies as far as how they feel about this?
Yeah, we had very preliminary conversations with an acquaintance, not necessarily with any main decision makers of the reimbursement market. We also have James on our advisory board. So James has taken a couple of cardiovascular tests through the reimbursement pipeline. So we're still gathering the necessary evidence, and we think reimbursement is most likely going to happen for us in the next 3 to 5 years.
I have a short question. You mentioned in one of the documents that were enclosed on the website that you can actually detect it or set within 3 years of getting a heart attack. Okay, so how do you validate it to be able to say within 3 years and not within 5, within 10, and how do you choose this patient that is at a risk, or that is a better match for the kind of solution that you are offering now?
Yeah, so just to clarify, the question is, how did we come about a 3-year window?
Yes.
And how did we validate that?
Yes.
Okay, As I mentioned previously, when we started with the Framingham Heart Study data, it was a research-based study where the individual's DNA was collected at time point 1, and they were followed for many years afterwards. And so what we found is who were the individuals within 3 years of their DNA being collected that had a cardiac event or not. In this case, being either heart attack or sudden cardiac death. And after doing that and developing the technology there, we went ahead and did a partnership with Intermountain Healthcare, where in their clinics, they saw patients on day 1 and collected their DNA and followed them and had medical records on them on what happened to them in the next 3 years. So we used the developed product to validate it in this clinical cohort that had the gold standard coronary angiogram information on whether they had a heart attack or if they passed as a result of coronary heart disease in 3 years. And the way we chose 3 years is, as I mentioned previously, we have multiple publications that we have done in the past. And what we realized is when we were looking at sample size and being able to enrich the group of people where we have good amount of samples and can understand their biomarkers well, we were looking at a 5-year or a 3-year or a 1-year window. And we spoke to cardiologists who we asked, would it make a difference to you, I should say primary care physicians and cardiologists, would it make a difference to you if we looked at 1 year versus 3 years versus 5 years? And the feedback that we got was, it doesn't matter if it's 3 or 5 years, 1 year is a little too short. So we enriched for the 3-year group.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Misha.
Thank you.
We're now going to go to our next company, Edith Lima for Dermot Diagnostics.
In adults.
Derma Diagnostics. We are focused on early prevention of cervical cancer by detecting biomarkers in a sensitive and non-invasive manner. Put yourself here. You're in an exam room with my friend Ellie. Her gynecologist walks in, and Ellie finds out that her unusual symptoms are due to cervical cancer. This is a type of cancer that kills 266,000 women worldwide. And these are just one too many lives lost due to insufficient tools in the areas of early detection. So it is time for us to cross this number out, or really at the very least diminish it. And since there's no immediate option for diagnoses, our product, DiaPatch, detects at the point of care step, being the only accurate non-invasive test in the segment of gynecologic health. My name is Edith Lima, and I'm founder and CEO of our startup.
This is Misha here. Okay, this is Misha here. I have 2 questions. One is, where do you position your asset to the current gold standard? You know, starting a few years ago, FDA is now actually approving the use of HPV assay as a standalone test or co-test to pap smear. And so where do you put yourself against HPV test? And right now, you know, given that HPV assay is actually being reimbursed by most of the insurance, do you expect the patient to self-pay for your asset?
Okay, so I think this is a 2-part question. Let me just clarify to make sure I answer it correctly. You're wondering where we position ourselves in the standard of care. So are we replacing the pap smear, or are we an aid to it, or are we something better, correct? And then the second piece is, will we be reimbursed for it at the same rate as the pap smear, or is there another area that we're looking for reimbursement, or if there isn't at all and the patient is paying out of pocket, correct?
Yep.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So to answer your first question, we are looking to have our early adopter pool be actually the in-between the pap smear and the colposcopy, which is the procedure that follows after a woman has had a series of abnormal pap smears. So to that end, we would be a completely new tool that breaches that gap that exists there at the moment. And it would be cost effective because we wouldn't be charging the $500 to $700 fee that occurs during a colposcopy. We would be cheaper there. With that in mind, then it brings me to the point of reimbursement. We have looked at the reimbursement for the area of screening, which would be our follow-on market, right? So we think if we can capture this early adopter pool of cervical intraepithelial neoplasias, which is that pre-cancer stage before getting to the cervical cancer, we can come around and then pick up all of the screening sector of human papillomavirus. So for the reimbursement of that particular pool, it would be completely reimbursable, and it's in the range of $100 total. For the reimbursement for the colposcopy, I actually just email our coding and billing specialists to be able to get those numbers and do the analyses. But we believe that it will more than cover it, and our test will be cheaper.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. The form factor for your product is sort of a patch with these little device things. Have you tested it on a wide range of body types and sizes? Because I have some experience where some of those patches don't work with people with a certain BMI. And in particular, because I'm thinking there are a lot of abnormal pap smears for women postpartum. And that obviously, so anyways, tell me about your testing with the form factor.
Absolutely. So we're utilizing microneedles to be able to pick up the biomarkers that are found in interstitial fluid. And so the reason why it has to be worn on the pelvic area is because the lymphatic nodes that are found there are where the circulating tumor cells that bring our biomarkers to the picture are found. So the studies that have actually been done, your point of, having something that's elastic and has microneedles may vary across different populations and based on prior conditions, correct? So I think when we get into the clinical pilot stages, that's something to absolutely consider. And based on real data that shows, when and what particular age ranges are women having more abnormal pap smears and not, if they happen to have a history of cervical cancer in their family, obviously that impacts it as well. But what we know so far from actual clinical studies that others have done in the space of microneedles is that these are manufactured out of biodegradable materials, right? They're normally in the form of 600 to 800 microns, so they're really, really tiny in size. And when it comes to pain, patients have not actually reported any type of uneasiness due to it. The one factor that has impacted is the amount of volume that this patch would be picking up. So patients reported in these clinical studies that if you go above 1 milliliter of serum, of interstitial fluid, what have you, that's when they report some level of discomfort. To further that point, a startup that published in the Nature Biomedical Engineering Journal in 2018 showcased that they could sample with these microneedle arrays between 50 microliters and up to 250. So that's really the ranges that we're looking to do, if not at maximum 500 microliters. And that the flow rate there was around 350 microliters per minute. So it was not going to create this uneasiness. They also looked at the dermal responses after the fact and found that these were between 0.1 and 0.6. So essentially the descriptor meaning for those was no evidence of irritation and minimal erythema. So with those numbers is how we would plan our pilot clinical studies accordingly and absolutely taking into consideration those measures. But it was one of the main reasons we chose this type of platform. I mean, if we look at the area of gynecologic health, since Dr. Papanicolaou invented the pap smear, that's been over 30 years now. And if we were to look at our competitor landscape, there are companies out in the market right now as startups trying to develop probes to do something like this, if not better, but they're still being inserted into the cervix.
Yeah.
May I ask you, just to understand better how this works? So women put a patch, and for how long time should they carry it, and how do you look at compliance? So my question is, why to use as a wearable, okay, for how long time versus the use of screening programs that are out there, and it's once a year or once every 2 years. So I just want to understand the usability of this.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So the woman,
versus what is on there.
and the woman would go into her annual wellness exam, whether it's at her gynecologist office or family practice, family medicine practice, right? And then during that visit, the doctor's already going to be, they would have studied their chart to know if there is a history of cervical cancer in the family, or if she has had at least one other abnormal pap smear. And that's the scenario where our patch would be utilized initially. So then the woman wears it, it's given by the doctor or the nurse right there and then, and they continue their visit, all right? So by the time that the doctor has finalized, you know, the breast exams, had asked all these other questions about her own well women checkup, they would together look at the patch. And we have a companion app called Ellie, named after my friend, that helps with all these reminders if they need a referral to a gynecologic oncologist, if they need to follow on for another pap smear or our own tests in a year or 6 months, etc. So that's really where we could impact workflow and create more efficiencies for our doctors and our patients.
Okay, so it's for a few minutes during the consultation. Okay.
Exactly. 30 to 45 minutes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Where's the IP licensed from? You said it looks like you have 4 patents that are licensed.
That is correct. And this is a combination of IP that's coming out of academia between the University of Notre Dame and Harvard University. The assay developing of it, it's a synthetic riboregulator. And so that's really what we believe is the core of this technology beyond the microneedle sampling for the pre-analytical device. And we're working on the supplier that's giving us microneedles at the moment is actually a really well-recognized medical device company. So we're also in agreements towards getting industry-based IP with them for those microneedle components.
Okay, thank you, Edith. We are going to now move on to Caitlin Cameron from AutoNexus. Caitlin, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
It always happens that way. Thank you. All right, everybody. Hello, I'm Caitlin Cameron. I'm Chair and CEO of AutoNexus Medical Technologies, and AutoNexus has developed a breakthrough medical device for the accurate diagnosis of middle ear infections in children and adults. Middle ear infections are the #1 reason for both antibiotics and surgery in children, and this is a worldwide problem. Our simple, elegant, inexpensive, and easy to use device is fully patented. It has a recurring revenue stream, and it already has huge pull from the physicians who are our target market, from children's hospitals, from insurance carriers, and from patients and parents. In fact, we already have a strategic investment from a major children's hospital, and our first 18 to 24 months worth of sales pretty much lined up. We have an amazing management team, very experienced and very knowledgeable, and we anticipate an exit to a big medical device manufacturer. We're seeking at this time go-to-market funds. Hope you'll join us. Thank you.
Thanks, Caitlin, for that. In your video, you did talk more about the how you were able to line up sales for the first 12 to 18 months. Can you talk a little bit more about that, and also about how you plan to sell into hospitals?
Yeah, absolutely. So the great thing about this medical device is, you know, it's designed to look and feel just very much like the device they use today. So you put it in your pocket, you carry it around. If you can use a otoscope like you use today, you can use our device. Very simple and easy to use. And the key thing about lining up these sales is this strategic investment from Children's of Minnesota. So Children's of Minnesota, major children's hospital, very important hospital, and they're one of the very few that has an investment fund. And so after 9 months of due diligence, they made a direct significant equity investment in this company, and the same terms we're offering all of you, but they made it a requirement of that investment that they be first, because they want to quickly deploy this device throughout their entire system. It's not just the hospital. To be important, it's very important to note, it's all the primary care practices that are associated with that hospital system. 240 children's hospitals in the United States. Each of them has somewhere between 12 and 25 individual pediatric practices. And so they deploy throughout their entire system. So Children's of Minnesota is first, and they will soak up about our first year's worth of production. Behind them, Children's of Philadelphia and Seattle Children's will add up to about our first 18 to 24 months. We have partnerships with both of those hospitals as well.
Just to follow on with that, would you anticipate then having an exit after that year or two? Because I mean, I think you've pretty much, the product is developed. I mean, if you get that adoption in those two different markets, that's obviously very attractive. How, so what have been your conversations about exit to date?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Yeah, we've been in conversation with several of the big medical device manufacturers. And in fact, I would say 5 of the top 5 probable acquirers, and they are very interested. They're very attracted by, obviously, the recurring revenue stream. We all love a recurring revenue stream, but they love that it's green space. Nobody else can differentiate viral from bacterial. Lots of companies are trying to do a better job of just identifying infection, but nobody can do viral versus bacterial. So it's completely green space. It doesn't cannibalize anything they're doing today, and they see this as a huge market opportunity. Plus, we talked to them about, it's not just the first product. There's an additional series of products that come behind this, both advances in addition to this individual device and better and more devices, but also this unique patented technology can be used to create many additional medical devices. So when we are in conversation with these folks, we kind of talk about that whole additional added value stream down the future as well. And there is a lot of interest, and you're right, I don't think we're going to be in market very long before we exit.
And what are some of the other uses that you could do besides inner ear?
Yeah, so this device, the first device, we call it the base model, is designed specifically for pediatricians. Everything they want, nothing they don't. Simple, easy, elegant, easy to use is the key for this one. The second one would be an advanced model with more features and functionality targeted towards ENTs or very large pediatric practices. That's where you get into, a lot of additional stuff like a tympanometer type data. Plus, it's where you can start gathering depersonalized data, throw it up in the cloud, and use AI for additional analysis. Behind that would be, obviously, it would be a home use model, would be the next advance, then perhaps a developing nation model, a veterinary model, which could basically just a different tip for veterinary. Beyond that, we've identified about 20 additional medical devices that could be made with this technology. The obvious first step would be very quickly could be made a simpler, cheaper, easier glaucoma test. That big puff of air you get very quickly could produce a glaucoma test that is a much better test. And then there's additionals behind that as well.
I think go ahead, sorry.
It is just a very short question. You are asking for 10 million to complete product development. And the question is, how far have you come? And can you specify what you mean? So which are the next steps for the company?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd call us extremely late stage product development. All we really have left is a little bit of software to finish, and then the usual testing that occurs before you go to the FDA. So the engineering testing, performance testing, safety testing, et cetera. And then we go to the FDA, we will be in market next year. So very short timeline coming up. I think there was a second part of your question, but I couldn't hear it.
No, what's just that? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think you have a great and elegant product. My question is, what's your pricing model? Would that be one-time sales, or do you have some recurring disposable? And the second part will be, can you talk a little bit about your go-to-market strategy, given that you will be selling to primary care doctors, or will you leave that question to your acquirer?
Yeah, so first let me talk about the revenue model a little bit. Obviously, there's a recurring revenue stream, and that we earn money from the sales of the device. Classic razor blade. Earn money from the sales of the device, but where we really make money is on the tip. So it's 1 tip per patient, throw it away. There is an existing CPT code, so physicians can be reimbursed from day one. It's really important because they don't get reimbursed for the otoscopy that they perform today. It's just included as part of the office visit. So an existing CPT code provides reimbursement. A busy pediatrician will pay off this device in maybe a week. And then from there on, they will make money from the reimbursement. They pay us for that recurring revenue stream. Every time that gets used, we get a payment. I'll also comment that the pediatricians have been telling us they want to include it not just when a child shows symptoms, but as preventative care. Because if we can catch these earlier and treat them better, that's better patient care. And in addition, this thing can identify asymptomatic middle ear infections. This one cannot. Asymptomatic, no pain, no indication, no red swollen eardrum, can last months or even years, almost always causes permanent hearing loss. So the ability to capture it is really big.
I'm just curious, this is just a random thing, is as a parent, ear infections were the bane of my existence. Because you go and sometimes they're not really sure. I've been on vacation with kids with ear infections. So to me, the pain point is so clear. I was just curious if in your presentations and your discussions with a lot of venture investors, if they really understand what a huge pain point this is, because I know as a mom investor, like this, I totally get this market and what this is going to do and how transformative it can be.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'd say the ones who are parents get it a lot more than the ones who aren't, but they all get that it costs us up to $15 billion a year, and that there's, you know, an ability. The pull from the insurance carriers is probably the biggest thing they understand, because the insurance carriers are looking at huge cost savings on the back end. Let me comment on that, and I still need to answer your go-to-market question. One of the things that this really is valuable for is one of the ways the insurance carriers are looking to save money. Tympanostomy tube surgeries, if there's about 1 million of tympanostomy tube surgeries every single year in the United States, and that's a full-on surgery. Child is fully put under anesthesia, and clinical studies show that up to 40% of those are completely unnecessary. This device can tell you when it's necessary and when it's not. Imagine the cost savings and the good for the patients if we could eliminate a third of tympanostomy tube surgeries. Our go-to-market, just very quickly, is we're not selling to onesie-twosie docs, we're going to the children's hospitals. We'll sell to individual children's hospitals. They'll deploy throughout all of the pediatric practices in their hospital system, and then we'll move on to the next children's hospital. I don't believe we'll ever get past the children's hospitals before we exit.
Can I have a very short question? You are mentioning that there are applications within food, veterinary, and then of course healthcare, but you have plans of an exit within, I don't know, 2 SOEs or something. My question is, how do you plan that exit? Do you want to keep some applications for yourself, develop it, and then SO later on, or you will just, you know, sell everything?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question, because here's what we know is typically the big medical device manufacturers prefer to own it all. And we have some applications, potential applications that are outside of medical, industry applications, food service applications, food production applications, like, for example. So those are potential out-license opportunities. So what we'll say to the big medical device manufacturers, if you want to own it all, just pay us for the value of this, and then you can have it all. And if you don't want to own it all, that's fine. We'll out-license those additional non-medical applications.
Okay.
It'll be up to the acquirer.
Okay.
Thank you, Caitlin. We're now going to move on to our next company, Andrea Wang from Ahead Medicine.
Hi, everyone. I'm Andrea Wang. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Ahead Medicines. And we use machine learning algorithms to develop various clinical analysis for physicians in blood cancer diagnostic and cancer immunoprofiling. And the reason I'm really attached to a cancer research area is because I'm a cancer patient myself. So all along, I've been studying breast cancer in graduate school, and later on, working in pharmaceutical company, launch oncology products. And right now, we have developed a fully automated analytic tool to help blood cancer immunoprofiling analytics 100 times faster than their current manual analysis approach. And we are raising an equity round to establish the quality management system and have an FDA pre-submission meeting and kick off our external validation study with our partner in the States. Right now, we have in communication with University of Washington, Roswell Park Cancer Center, and we've been working with University of Pittsburgh Medical Center since 2018. Yeah.
Thank you. May I ask you about the business model? Your business model, as it is so today, is to sell subscriptions to hospitals and labs that are using today flow cytometry. My question is, why not to partner directly with the flow cytometry manufacturer companies? So wouldn't it be just easier for scaling up?
Yeah, exactly. So we do have this option open, and right now, as the software we are developing right now is tailor-made for clinical cytometry analysis. So in order for us to work with a partner and leverage the sales team within the BD or culture, for example, we still need to get the FDA clearance first. So they do has a possibility that like a lot of, I would say, AI-enabled software medical device company, there may be an exit window be acquired right about get a clearance. And then we are already in discussions with a couple flow cytometer manufacturers already. but I think they're still watching us to see if we can reach to the milestone and the trigger points.
Okay, thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about your IP and about the grant that you got from Taiwan for the $1 million?
Yes. So the grant we got, it was still we got it while we were still a research team, and it was funded by the Taiwan Ministry of Science and Technology. So it's a non-diluted grants that would support us to further develop our algorithm, and we use that to hire the full engineering team and build our software prototype for us that we're going to move forward for the external validation study. And for the IP, because the IP were jointly owned by 2 universities and 1 hospitals in Taiwan. So we just have exclusive license for 20 years from all of these institutes to the spin-off as a Taiwan entity. And right now we have I was a master service agreement between Taiwan entity and with our Delaware C Corp. So we will also exclusive license this IP to the US entity, where we'll have all these future collaboration co-development contracts in the US market.
Can you talk a little bit about how do you plan to price your service or product?
Yes. So right now, for any flow cytometry analysis, is also there's also existing CPT code. So for blood cancer diagnostic, on average, every analysis, there will be a reimbursement around $90 US. So before we have our own CPT code as AI assisted analytic, we will have to share the revenue with the hospitals, and that's why we are also hoping to raise this funding to be able to work with very experienced market access consultants for this particular area, because and I think this is the question that every AI software medical device really like to explore, how to really optimize. And because for me, I believe the getting the insurance to pay directly will definitely help us to get a market share and acceptance in the clinical practice.
Thank you.
One question from me. How does it work? Do you integrate the software into the IT system of the lab, or it is just an add-on? So how does it work in reality?
Yeah, so for because we are originally from the hospital, so I can explain the current workflow in our hospital. So there will be a computer system that is attached to the flow cytometer instruments. After the data acquired, the data will actually upload it to the private cloud within a hospital. And the physicians or the technology who is going to perform analysis, they will use the computer of their own choosing and download those data and perform the analysis. And so right now in a lot of partners that I had talked to in the US, they also will use a cloud-based flow cytometry analysis solutions. And so that's why we also plan to make our software as a cloud-based SaaS platform that allow the physicians have the flexibility that as long as they're within the network, they can just use any instruments to perform analysis. Usually because their time frame is really, I would say, fragmented because they have to juggle in between different clinical tasks.
Okay, so there is not any kind of data integration between the information from your software and the data from the patient. It is just completely separated. You understand that sometimes sometimes it's not only about receiving data from the flow from the equipment, but also looking at other patient data that might be relevant for the overall assessment.
Oh, yeah. So for our algorithms, we just purely analyze the immunoprofile measured by the flow cytometry and a computer inference. So our physicians will still have to, I would say, perform the ultimate sign-off to be incorporated in the electronic health record together with the other clinical test results.
Okay, thank you. I get it. Yeah.
Yep.
I have a question. Have you explored anything related to blockchain as far as the keeping these records?
No, currently we plan to use HIPAA compliant AWS solutions to work with the hospitals. Yeah.
I'm just kind of curious because of the way you were talking about your database. It sounded like that would be a potentially useful exercise.
Yeah. In the future, I think we are open to various possibility because I think at this moment our engineering team just don't have equivalent. We are really laser focused to bring our minimal viable product to go through the validation study and to the FDA submission. But later on, once we have implemented in the practice, we will be open to make it more sophisticated and more secure solutions as the technology evolve.
May I ask you, when we are now talking about the future, and just to understand what you have in the pipeline, do you think that in the future, the flow cytometry might be a change for other methods that can do exactly the same? So today there are many medtech biotech companies developing alternatives to flow cytometry. So my question is, do you think that the system that you are providing is adaptable to other solutions that might come?
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah, to answer your question, flow cytometry, in the beginning, it was a cell-based solution that right now they are moving toward to the spectral cytometry. So they are actually trying to increase the number of markers they can profile within single round of tests. And that will make the data output formats even more complex. That's why I think had advanced analytic tool powered by artificial intelligence is a growing trend in this area. I think every company, and even the hospital, I just talked to Mayo, they are also trying to build such technology. But there are a lot of technical nuance. And to answer if the flow cytometry will be replaced, I believe not, because I know there are a lot of NGS sequence technology or a lot of known company omic based, but from a physician standpoint, there are a lot of post-translational modifications that they need to monitor that is directly correlated to the pathologic phenotype. So from the physician standpoint, they will actually like to have clinical tests that will be able to cover different aspects, the genetic aspect, mRNA aspect, as well as protein aspect, to make a more informed clinical judgments.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andrea. Now we're going to move on to our fifth presentation from Helena Cowley, Oxidian Pharmaceuticals.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for your time. So I'm Helena Cowley. I'm the CEO of Oxidian Pharmaceuticals. We mitigate kidney disease by treating hyperoxaluria. And hyperoxaluria is an imbalance in the urine caused mainly by dietary oxalate that cause acute and disruptive kidney stone disease, which leads to progression of CKD and ultimately end-stage renal failure in very severe cases. So this is a very large unmet need. There's about 250,000 patients in the US alone, and there are no treatments for any form of hyperoxaluria. We have a novel proprietary oral enzyme that we've demonstrated treats hyperoxaluria from a healthy volunteer study. We also have a very favorable safety profile and strong relationships with clinic systems here in the US, including kidney stone clinics with deep expertise in hyperoxaluria. We've been successful in raising grant funds as well as dilutive funding. I'm currently raising $9 million to initiate and complete a dose-finding phase 2 study. Thank you.
Thank you. I was looking at the material that you had on the website, and you have some information about one of the products that are on the market, but I was wondering about the products that are now in the pipeline of pharma companies as a biotech, if any? If you can just, mention a few or any close competitors.
Right. There's Alina Pharmaceuticals. That's a publicly traded company. They're in their second phase 3 trial with an oxalate reducing enzyme. So this is also an enzyme, but a different molecule from ours. And then there's 2 companies that are have as a modality a synthetic microbe to colonize the gut. And those are both in preclinical stage currently.
Do you think, so what is your competitive advantage, or so what do you think it's your, so why should Pfizer or anybody, choose to make a deal?
Right. When it comes to the microbe modality, we are positioned as a first line of defense because we address the problem as early as possible in the GI tract, and that's very significant. As compared to our main competitor, the other enzyme, ours is more potent, and we show that in our clinical data. The reason why that's significant is because the agency, so the US FDA here, has questioned whether a 15% reduction or a 20% reduction in urinary oxalate is sufficient to show a clinical benefit. So it would be very compelling to have a large reduction in urinary oxalate, which our data supports that we will see in patients.
Okay, thank you.
Can you talk a little bit more about the company as a spin out of the other company, and is the money you're raising now for the spin out, or how's that structured?
Yeah, so this technology started being developed in 2009 in Capdesign. And in parallel with the development of these technologies, these enzyme technologies, we also built a contract development and manufacturing organization with a focus on live biotherapeutics. So that part of the business was sold last year to a large CDMO in Massachusetts who wanted to combine our facility with a commercial facility. So in that deal, we essentially spun out the drug assets since the buyer is not really in pharmaceutical development. So it was a really good deal in the end for both parties. And this money is being raised for Oxidian Pharmaceuticals that's completely independent.
Got it. Thanks.
Okay, I have one question. It's about your exit strategy. Do you intend to make a deal after phase 2, after completing phase 3, or do you intend to bring it to the market? So what's the exit model for you?
We're very open to when an exit can take place. We know very well what we do well. And we also are very aware of the capital requirements for the upcoming trials. This round is 9 million. The next pivotal trial, most likely 17. And if needed, post-market trials, most likely double of that. So there's a significant capital requirement for post-market studies. And for that reason, we would be very open to have those conversations, yeah.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit more about the addressable market, how big it is?
Yeah, so under secondary hyperoxaluria, you have enteric hyperoxaluria, which is a more severe type. And that's the 250,000 patients in the US. And there was a big study done, very comprehensive, to determine that population size. It was published in 2019. So of that population, it's very heterogeneous. There's different indications within that. So Crohn's, IBD, I should say, celiac disease, etc. But of the 250,000, about 100,000 are recurrent stone formers, which is what we plan to evaluate in our upcoming trial. But besides that population, which is large in itself, there's a larger market in idiopathic hyperoxaluria, which is defined as, well, where the cause is unknown. So they have the elevation in their urine of oxalate, but it's not clear where it's from. Urologists will tell us that's a much larger market, but a population that's harder to study. But it's certainly an opportunity. And besides that, to be honest with you, there's also interstitial cystitis or bladder pain that has been linked to oxalate, but some more data is required there. So we believe there's significant opportunity for an oxalate reducing enzyme orally delivered.
Is there a, you said you had 2 competitors. Do both of those competitors have to go through FDA approval? Because one of them you said was, I think you said it was a nutrient type product. And then the other question is, are the both of the, what stage are both of the competitors at?
Yeah, our main competitor is in their second phase 3 study. So they're very late stage, but not necessarily showing that compelling of a data package. There is currently no nutraceutical that would be competing. And the other 2 competitors that have a synthetic microbe, those are also drug products in development.
And are those competitors focused on the 250,000 people in your study, or are their products aiming at a broader market? Do you know what their target markets are?
For Alina Pharmaceuticals, they're definitely targeting the enterics, the 250,000. The same with Synlogic. Novome Biotechnologies, that, to be honest with you, I am not 100% sure. They may be looking at the secondary hyperoxaluria, to be honest with you. And I can certainly follow up on that particular question.
Okay, thank you.
I had one short question. It is because you had the spin-off from another company that made a deal recently. My question is whether you, in any case, happen to have any existing R&D collaborations with any of the big pharma or with any other partner that has been engaged with you or with the mother company, just to get a feeling of, of the likelihood that a deal can happen soon.
Mm-hmm. So we do have a research collaboration with the strategic partner, a smaller company, and they were actually the company that invested in Capdesign, and they're still a minority shareholder. And that collaboration is still ongoing and certainly supportive of our ongoing activities. There are currently no collaboration with sort of larger pharma, but we certainly have a strong relationship with large clinic systems in the US, and I will actually announce some news around that hopefully in the coming couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes our presentations. Thank you very much to our panelists for participating, Marcia, Josh, Michael, Barbara, and Iris. And thank you to our presenting companies, to Misha, Edith, Caitlin, Andrea, Helena. I'll be sending a follow-up to you if there's any conversations that you want to have. Again, thank you very much for your participation. Have a great day.